Welcome to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. Recently, several Kroger locations in Louisville were flagged for serious sanitation violations, including rodent infestations. Inspectors found nests, droppings, and other red flags that raised real public health concerns. It's enough to make anyone wonder, how safe is our food? How often are grocery stores inspected? And what should shoppers look for to stay safe? Today, we're breaking down what it takes to keep your food safe and how our public health officials work behind the scenes to stop problems before they spread. Joining us is Samantha Gootee, an environmental health specialist and food inspector with Louisville Metro's Department of Public Health. Samantha, thanks for being here on Track.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So can you start by explaining your role? What does a food inspector do day to day?
So we have 17 food inspectors in Louisville Metro, and they are tasked with inspecting anything that has to do with food. So if there is a facility that is preparing food, cooking food, selling food, we're going to be in there inspecting. Those could be restaurants, grocery stores, hotels, daycares, schools, and then we also do food trucks. Any big temporary events where we out and we inspect Bourbon and Beyond, Louder Than Life, the State Fair. We have the State Fair coming up, which is a very big event for 2 weeks that we have all of our inspectors on deck inspecting all of those temporary booths at the State Fair. So anything that has to do with food, we're in there making sure it's safe for the public.
That's so much ground to cover.
It's a lot.
Oh, my goodness. Well, so in the case of Kroger, I'm just curious, what triggered the inspections at multiple locations, and what did your team find when you went out there?
So Kroger in general gets inspected twice a year. Actually, pretty much any of our food services establishments gets inspected twice a year. So we're only in there 2 out of the 365 days a year. That's what is required. So we really rely on the public to let us know what they're seeing, because they're going to be in there a lot more often than we are. So what kind of prompted this was an influx of complaints at one specific Kroger, which was the Goss Avenue one, which is where it started. We received that complaint, and so our inspectors went out, and we were finding some rodent activity that we had not previously seen before. So Kroger worked really well with us to ensure that product was removed from shelves, especially product that maybe had been chewed through, or if there was rodent droppings on the shelves, we had all of that product removed and thrown away. So that is what kind of where it started. And then once the media kind of got a hold of it, more complaints were coming in for other Krogers. So we were out and kind of inspecting all of those as well.
So, yeah, and it's funny. I remember going to Kroger and being like, why is it closed right now? And and like learning about that. So I think it's kind of fascinating. So was this considered an unusual case for the city, or do you see rodent issues like this more often than we might think?
So every food facility has to have a pest control program. So they have to have policies in place to prevent pests from getting in, preventing them from reproducing, and having those policies in place to prevent an infestation. So, I mean, in any restaurant, you have food, you have water, there's harborage locations, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's common to see. We don't see very much infestations, but they have to have the policies in place to prevent that from happening. So we have to make sure we're sealing up outer openings. If there's holes in the wall, we got to get those sealed up to prevent anything from coming inside.
So this was a little out of the norm.
Yeah, well, for the Goss Avenue Kroger, they definitely had some trenches and some outer openings not sealed properly where they could easily tell that that's where mice were getting in from, and those were sealed off, concreted to prevent those from coming in. But I would say the majority of your grocery stores, every store should have a pest control program in place.
So when an issue shows up across multiple stores in the same chain, does that raise questions about something bigger like distribution or streamlined infrastructure issues? Kind of like what you were talking about, like stuff on the outside needed to be sealed, but maybe like across all of these that are being investigated or thought about?
I know that for Kroger that they have kind of been looking at their layout of their stores and how refrigeration lines are, how they're lined up to make sure that they're sealed up properly. So they're kind of looking at it across all of their stores. We have the state actually inspects the distribution centers for Kroger, so that I know that they have been out there at those locations to inspect those. So we're all hands on deck just to make sure. Kroger's working very well with us to make sure that anything that we're seeing and anything we're asking of them, they're complying with.
And like you said, they're inspected twice a year. But unless of course the public is notifying you, what does that inspection process usually look like?
Yeah, so we show up unannounced. Our inspectors we have kind of a list of when a facility is due for an inspection. We show up unannounced. We're there. Hey, we're here for your inspection. Usually they're surprised. Sometimes they know we usually come every 6 months, so they kind of know when we're going to come. But we show up unannounced for the retail side. So for Kroger in particular, they get 2 inspections. Their retail side gets 1 inspection. Their food service side gets another inspection. So the food service side is going to be your deli, your bakery. That's where more high-risk areas, because they're handling food, they're cooking food. That is more chances of getting a foodborne illness is going to be in the food preparation areas. So we spend a lot of time there working with them to make sure that they are washing hands, changing gloves. Their cooking temperatures, their chicken's cooked to 165, their hot holding, cold holding temperatures are at the right temperatures. So for that side is 1 inspection, gets 1 score. Then for their retail side, that gets another score. For the retail section, we walk up and down the aisles, we check for adulterated food. We don't want to see dented cans because that can cause botulism. So we're checking dented cans, we're checking for cleanliness, any food, any refrigerations, we're checking for temperatures. So if they have cold holding, 41 degrees and below, if they have any hot holding, 135 or higher. So we're checking for holding temperatures. Then we're also checking just for, is the food from an approved source? So more than likely, if it's a corporate store, all of that food is going to come from an approved source. Every once in a while, if it's like a smaller chain restaurant, their grandma might cook cookies at home and bring them in to sell. Obviously, that's not allowed. So we also are just making sure that the food comes from an approved source.
I have to reference, because you talked about a dented can, and I've never thought about that before. What is botulism? I actually don't know.
So it's just a foodborne illness that in a dented can, if there's air that's getting in, so a lot of times if it's dented, there'd be like a little hole and air could be getting in, and it causes botulism, which is a foodborne illness. Yeah.
I never thought of that. Wow, that's fascinating.
You always want to check your canned goods. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And you want to make sure that the seal isn't broken on any of the seals. Yeah.
So are there, you were talking about these more vulnerable areas like the deli counters, maybe the bakery, those things. Are there specific requirements for grocery stores? I know as well as restaurants, there's usually that are to handle or sell food, like certifications or training.
Yeah, so for our food service permits, they're required to be a certified food manager on duty at all times. So this is a course, we actually offer it from the Louisville Metro. It's a course that they can take online, and it's good for 3 years, but it's basically a course that teaches you all about food safety. It's more for managers on reporting illnesses and when you should exclude someone from work if they're sick, and it teaches them all about food safety. So we do require that one person in the restaurant has that at all times, and you can obviously have multiple people that hold that certificate, but as long as one person in the facility has it, that's what we require.
And is that different for restaurants? Because I feel like I remember when I worked in a restaurant, not here in Kentucky, but I'd had to learn you got to push the fish on this part of the refrigerator, and these kind of certifications, just talking about education in that respect.
And that's what it's all about education, and we actually recommend that more than just the managers take it. I always tell my facilities, anyone can take the course. It's a very good educational tool to understand why we do certain things. So you might tell someone you need to do something this way, but it kind of explains the why we do something like that. So, but that's the main certificate that we require.
Okay. And then, so is it common to see, I feel like when walking around, going out, stuff like that, we always see these letter grades at restaurants. But is there a similar grading system in place for grocery stores, or do they work differently?
So the A, B, and C placards that you'll see around town are going to be only for the food service facilities that are actually preparing food. Our retail stores do not get a placard, but they do get a score that you can look up online. We have a database on our website that you can look at any food facility in Louisville Metro and look at their score. So theirs is just the retail stores just have like a score and if they passed or failed, whereas the food service facilities actually have the ABC grade, letter grade.
And I'm just curious, because for our knowledge, like, are they, they're kind of, so there's a different kind of system, but are they graded on similar things?
Yes, yeah. So the inspection is actually the exact same inspection. So we're checking the exact same thing on both food service and retail. You just might not see as many things on the retail side. Like you're not going to see cooking temperatures on a retail side that you would on the food service side. So the inspection's exactly the same. You're just not going to see everything.
So what would be some of the things on the rubric of that inspection that could lead to a failing grade?
So for retail, if food is out of temperature, well, really for both. If food is out of temperature, so if our temperature danger zone where bacteria can grow is 41 degrees to 135 degrees. So you want to keep food out of that range. So if we find food in that range, you would fail your inspection because that could tell us that bacteria could be growing. So that's definitely one of the things. Cooking temperatures. So there's really 5 high risk factors that we look for that typically cause foodborne illness. It's going to be hygiene practices. So are they washing their hands, changing gloves? If they're, are they coming to work sick? You don't want to come to work sick and then potentially cross-contaminate bacteria. The cooking temperatures that we discussed, the holding temperatures, food from an unapproved source, and then cross-contamination. So if you are, have raw chicken on a cutting board, using a knife to cut it, you wouldn't want to use that same cutting board and that same knife to cut some raw tomatoes that are going to go on your salad because that's going to be cross-contamination.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess when you're doing those, what are some of the most common violations that you see?
I would say probably the holding temperatures.
Okay.
And hand washing. Those are some big ones because people don't realize your phone is so dirty. So, they'll pick up their phone and then they'll start using it and then they won't wash their hands before they go back to work.
No.
So I know. So we see hand washing as a big one. It's definitely a big one. And then, holding temperatures, especially in the summertime, coolers are working a lot harder to stay cold. And we see a lot of food out of temp, especially in the summertime.
That's fair. That's a good reminder, too. I'm a weirdo who washes my phone, but now I feel justified. So have you noticed yourself, like, doing this work for a while, have you noticed any recent trends, like, either locally or nationally in food safety issues? And are there any specific factors driving that, if you have seen anything?
I think right now we've really been focused on doing risk-based inspections where we're really paying more attention to the areas that are more likely to cause a foodborne illness. So we're really paying attention to those areas. I'm not sure. I've only been inspector for 5 years, and just recently became a manager. So in the last 5 years, I think it's really we just have to educate our staff and educate all the food service workers on the proper procedures to ensure that they know why we do something, to ensure that we're not, to ensure there's not a foodborne illness outbreak.
So you're not seeing anything, though, generally like an uptick in anything or anything that's changed in those 5 years?
Nothing I can think of.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess we'll kind of talk about what you were saying is just like the factors behind this. When it comes to sanitation or pest issues, what are some of the factors people might not think about, like recent weather events, maybe types of development, or even where a neighborhood is located? How do those things play into the risk?
Yeah, there was actually a lot of discussion with the most recent weather and the most recent flooding with the mice, and because of all the flooding that we've had, and that could be a reason that some of the mice are trying to find, different homes because they're trying to get away from that water. So that was definitely one of the big concerns that we were thinking of could have been what caused a lot of these mice issues.
So kind of like migration and displacement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a friend who said they had a terminator come into their house, and they had a Norwegian rat, which sounded very fancy to me, and they named it Sven because of the flooding. So this tracks. I'll justify that. So have there been any recent changes as you're going along to local or federal policy that are affecting how you approach inspections, either making things easier or adding new challenges?
Well, I will say, so currently we inspect on the 2013 FDA Food Code, which is next year we are going to be adopting the 2022 FDA Food Code. And in that food code, I don't think that there's very many changes, but it is focusing more on risk-based inspections. And currently we inspect on risk-based, but the new food code is going to have us more focusing on the more high-risk areas. So, because that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent a foodborne illness.
And what are the high-risk areas?
So it's going to be the food service where you're handling food, preparing food, cooking food. So, just really focusing on that aspect of a facility. And if they have any special processes where, they're cooking food and then cooling it down and then reheating it later, that's going to be like a special process where a lot of hazards could be in place where we have to make sure that it's at the proper temperature zone. So,
well, thank you very much. We'll be back in just a minute. You're on track with Louisville Public Media.
Your body is brilliant. Nature's Bounty has a bounty of solutions to help you thrive, supporting your systems from your head to your heels. Nature's Bounty High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate supports heart, bone, nerve, and muscle health, while just one hair growth capsule a day helps grow thicker, fuller hair. Delicious new Nature's Bounty Probiotic Gummies contain prebiotics and postbiotics, supporting gut health, regularity, and immune health. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Learn more at naturesbounty.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
At Leidos, we make things smarter and more efficient. From cutting development time in half on a new class of cruise missile for the DoD, to already being done with this ad. Leidos, making smart smarter.
Welcome back to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. Today we're talking about food safety in Louisville following a recent series of rodent sightings at several area grocery stores. Joining us is Samantha Gootee, an environmental health specialist and food inspector with Louisville Metro's Department of Public Health. So what actually happens to food that's been contaminated by rodents or pests? What kinds of health risks can that pose?
So any food that we find that could possibly be contaminated, even in the slightest, or adulterated, we quarantine it immediately. We have to pull it off shelves. We throw it in. We have to. Basically, our inspectors cannot leave a facility until that food is in the trash and quarantined so that it cannot be up for sale anymore. So yeah, we're not going to leave until that food is disposed of properly.
So for people walking into a grocery store today, what are some signs they should look for that something might not be right?
Oh yeah, so definitely, even I do it when I go to a grocery store. I'm checking to make sure the produce looks right. The meat looks, your raw meat should look nice. It shouldn't be smelling. It shouldn't be discolored. So definitely check those areas. If there's refrigeration, you want to make sure that refrigeration's at proper temperature. Every refrigerator should have a thermometer on it. It should be 41 degrees and below. So you could always check that if you wanted to. Check the shelves. Obviously check for cleanliness. Cleanliness tells a lot about a store, especially in the bathrooms. So check your shelving. If you're seeing any kinds of, food that looks like it's been torn through, definitely bring it up to the manager of the facility and make them aware of it. But anything odd, I would say you can always report it to us. So we accept, you can just call our office and submit a complaint and we'll go out and investigate it.
That's cool. You mentioned produce too. Is there anything specific people should look out for in that respect?
I would look for fruit flies and then just any produce that could be molding or just, doesn't look right, you know, bring it up to the manager's attention first because more than likely they'll pull it immediately.
Hmm.
But if you're seeing it over and over again, then you can definitely call and let us know.
That's good to know. So once people bring their groceries home, are there things that they should check or steps that they can take to make sure their food is safe?
Um, I would definitely, when you leave a grocery store, try to get that food in your refrigerator as soon as possible. Don't want to leave it in your car overnight. Don't want to leave it, sitting out. Get it in the fridge as soon as possible. But just, you could also take temperatures of the food when you get home if you wanted, just to see what the temperature is. I would a lot of expiration dates, a lot of dates on product are more for a quality issue and not necessarily a food safety issue. So when you're looking at those dates, really check and see if it says for expired by or for food safety, and check for those kinds of dates. And if those are expired, then I probably wouldn't eat them.
Oh yeah, so that's actually a great point because like you see like a sell by date and or a best by date and then expired by. Could you tell us like a little bit about those differences?
So the best by date and a sell by date is typically going to be just a quality date. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the food at a food safety standpoint would be bad to eat. It's more for a quality issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So it like on raw meat, when you see those sell by dates, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad, but it could be bad. The best thing to do with raw meat is to look at it, smell it. What does it look like? Is there an odor? If there's an odor, or if it's, it's turning colors,
Yeah.
then you probably should not eat it. That would kind of tell you that there's something wrong with that. But just going by the date, I wouldn't go by just the date.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of like civil inspection yourself, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that before where you have like those bright colored meats and then you see them kind of going matte.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my test.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I mean, like you said, so public reporting is kind of the best for
Yeah.
it. So report directly to your website. There's a phone number too.
Yeah, you can call our office. You can reach out to us on social media. And then we also have our website that you can go to. Anything that you want us to investigate, we will go out for. Our inspectors are required to go out within 5 business days. If it's a foodborne illness investigation, we're required to go out within 48 hours. So, but any complaint that comes to us, we absolutely go out and investigate it.
And just for curiosity, like you hear sometimes about like, oh, like there's an outbreak like in other parts of the nation. Do you ever have like a system in place when you hear things like that when it comes to distribution of like maybe E. coli, listeria, or things like that?
Yeah, so we get a recall notice on items that have been recalled that could either be voluntarily recalled or recalled because of a foodborne illness outbreak. So when we get those, depending on what it is, if it's a foodborne illness outbreak, like there was some baby's formula that there was some issues with. So we went out to all of the retail grocery stores to make sure all that product was pulled off the shelf. So, yep.
That's a really good process. And like you said, so once a major issue is flagged, 5 business days, you'll be out there. And it sounds like that's like what happened with Kroger. So what happens next after you inspect then? Is it like you're part of the solution of like closing up things and infrastructure where like mice got in, like you said, or what happens in the solution process after that?
I think it depends. It depends on each store. So for a lot of the Krogers that we've been to, we are still doing follow-ups. So we're working with them weekly to ensure that they're staying on top of things. We're checking pest control reports. We're checking to see how many mice they've caught in the last week, and we want to see that going down. So we want to see progress. If we're not seeing progress, then something's wrong. So typically on any complaint that we go out to, depending on the situation, it could be something that can be fixed that day, or it might be something where we have to issue an order to have them repair something or fix something, and we'll come back the week later to make sure it's been properly fixed.
So in the case of Kroger, when would the standard be like case closed, I guess?
When we see absolutely no rodent activity, and there has been, I think there's 1 or 2 stores that we haven't seen any activity in several weeks. So that is great improvement.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. And so I'm curious about this. What's something about food safety that might surprise people, something they probably don't think about when they're grocery shopping?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing is like, I don't think people understand how much we work behind the scenes when it comes to food in general and the food. You know, you go out to a festival and little do they know, like, we're in there behind the scenes, like, inspecting everything. So I'm glad that we've gotten a lot of attention on food safety, because I think it's making people more aware of what we do and how important our job is, and to really protect the public. So,
Yeah, when you said the state fair, I just can't imagine how big of a project that is. And I mean, how long does something like that take to inspect?
well, we're there every single day. We inspect every single day, so that's 2 weeks that we're there. It's all hands on deck. All of our inspectors, even the state inspectors come and help us, because there are so many temporary booths there, and we inspect each one every single day, just because it's such a big population of people that come there. So we want to make sure that they're safe to eat.
And we have so many big events like that, the Kentucky Derby, all
Derby.
these things. Yeah, wow.
We are at all of them.
So before I let you go, I want to ask you, what have you learned in your time as a food inspector that changed the way you handle and store food in your own home?
Oh, that is a good one. And it's funny because my husband, he'll do something one way where he'll like won't wash his hands or won't, change the cutting board or change the knife. And then it freaks me out because I'm like, he doesn't understand. But I think the main thing is that I really focus on the temperatures in my refrigerator. I always check that. I always check on like storage. I always make sure, my raw chicken stored in the bottom. You don't want the raw chicken dripping on your vegetables. So I think I've really been paying more attention to my refrigerator and just making sure things are stored properly. I always temp my food when I cook it. I need my burger cooked to 155, whereas my husband wants his, medium rare. So I always am really big on checking temperatures of the food.
Well, Samantha, thank you so much for this conversation and being here on Track today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Samantha Gootee is an environmental health specialist and food inspector with Louisville Metro's Department of Public Health. On Track is a production of Louisville Public Media. The On Track production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Alex Biscardi, and Laura Ellis. Our music is by Kojin Toshiro. If you're just tuning in and you want to hear the full show, you can find it now at LouisvilleOnTrack.org or in your favorite podcast app. And let's continue the conversation. Is there something you want to hear about? Something that matters to your Kentuckiana experience? Let us know by sending us a text or giving us a call at 502-814-TALK or email us at ontrack@lpm.org. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and remember, from deli to door, food safety is worth asking for. Until next time, you're on Track with Louisville Public Media.
At Leidos, we make things smarter and more efficient. From helping the VA cut disability exam processing times by half, to already being done with this ad. Leidos, making smart smarter.